The ship that carried Ambassador Yuki Tanaka across the stars was small. It was old. The paint on its hull was starting to chip, and the engines made sounds that no engine should make. But it flew, and that was enough. Yuki stood at the window of her tiny cabin and watched the stars slide past. She was 62 years old. Her hair was gray and cut short. Her face had lines that came from years of difficult work and hard choices. She wore a simple dark suit with a small pin on her collar, a blue and green circle that represented Earth. In her hand, she held a tablet computer. On the screen were the words she planned to speak to the Galactic Council. She had written them herself. She had rewritten them 47 times. Each word had been chosen with care. Each sentence had been built like a bridge, meant to connect humanity to the vast civilization that waited among the stars. She knew, even as she read them again, that the words would probably fail. The door behind her opened with a soft hiss. Captain David Chen stepped inside. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that rarely showed what he was feeling. He had been a soldier before he became a pilot. The change had not been easy for him. "We arrive in 6 hours," he said. "The council has confirmed your speaking time." Yuki did not turn from the window. "How long did they give us?" 90 seconds. She was quiet for a moment. Then she laughed. It was not a happy sound. 90 seconds, she repeated, to speak for 8 billion people, to ask for the right to exist. Chen moved to stand beside her. Together they watched the stars. "The briefing materials say the Vorith have already filed their claim," he said. "They want Sol system, all of it. Earth, Mars, the colonies on Titan and Europa. Everything. I read the materials. Then you know what they do to species they claim. The Vorith don't colonize worlds, Ambassador. They harvest them. They take everything. The minerals, the water, the air, and the people." He stopped. His jaw was tight. "They take the people, too." Yuki finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were dark and calm. "I know what they do, Captain. I have seen the records. I have watched the footage from species that no longer exist. Children pulled from their mothers, entire populations loaded into ships and never seen again." She took a slow breath. "I know exactly what the Vorith are. Then why are we even going to the council? Why beg them for help?" "Because it is the right thing to do." She looked back at the stars. "Because if there is even a small chance that words can prevent what is coming, we must try. That is what humans do, Captain. We try, even when we know we will fail." Chen was silent for a long time. "And if the council refuses," he asked, "if they let the Vorith take Earth?" Yuki's reflection in the window smiled. It was a cold smile, a knowing smile. "Then we will do what humans have always done when words fail," she said. "We will fight." The world called Varith Prime was the heart of galactic civilization. It had been the seat of the council for 60,000 years, longer than humanity had existed as a species. The planet was covered in cities that stretched from pole to pole, buildings of crystal and light that touched the clouds. Ships moved through its skies like schools of fish, countless and constant. At the center of the largest city stood the Grand Rotunda. It was a building like no other. Its walls were made from the stones of 1,000 worlds, each piece given by a species that had joined the council. Its dome was transparent, showing the stars above. Inside, seats rose in circles around a central platform, and in those seats sat the representatives of the 12 elder species, the beings who ruled the Orion arm of the galaxy. When Yuki Tanaka walked into the rotunda, she felt very small. The chamber was vast. Her footsteps echoed on the stone floor. Above her, she could see the representatives watching. Some had eyes. Some had sensors that served the same purpose. Some were masses of light or shadow or things that her human brain could not quite understand. She walked to the central platform and stood alone. A voice filled the chamber. It came from everywhere and nowhere. It was the voice of the council itself, translated into human language by machines older than Earth's oldest civilizations. "The representative of the species known as humanity may speak. Time allotted, 90 seconds. Yuki looked up at the assembled beings. She thought of Earth, of the blue oceans and green forests, of the cities full of people who were waiting to learn if they would live or die. She thought of her granddaughter, who was 7 years old and loved to watch the stars at night. She began to speak. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she said, "I come before you today to request protected status for humanity and our home system. We are a young species. We achieved faster than light travel only 43 years ago. We know that we are new to this community, and we have much to learn." She paused. Her voice was steady. "But we are not animals. We are not resources to be harvested. We are thinking, feeling beings with hopes and dreams and families. We have art and music and science. We have built wonders on our world and reached for the stars because that is what we are. We are seekers, explorers, dreamers." In the seats above, something moved. A sound came from the Vorith section, a clicking, chittering noise that the translator rendered as laughter. Yuki continued. "The Vorith hegemony has filed claims on our system. They wish to harvest our world and our people. We ask the Council to reject this claim. We ask for the chance to live in peace, to grow, to one day take our place among the great civilizations of the galaxy." The chittering laughter grew louder. Other species joined in, strange sounds that all meant the same thing: mockery, contempt. Yuki raised her voice. "We offer friendship. We offer cooperation. We offer—" "Time expired," the chamber voice announced. The laughter continued. A figure rose from the Vorith section. It was tall, nearly 3 meters, with a body covered in black plates that looked like armor. Its eyes were large and amber-colored, divided into hundreds of tiny sections, like the eyes of an insect. Its mouth was a collection of sharp parts that moved constantly, even when it was not speaking. This was the Vorith Archon, the ruler of the hegemony. The being who had personally overseen the death of 17 intelligent species. "The Council recognizes the Vorith Archon," the chamber voice said. The Archon's translator made his words cold and precise. "I have listened to the humans speak," he said. "She uses words like dreams and hopes. She speaks of art and music. These are the sounds that prey makes before it is consumed." More laughter from the chamber. "The Vorith have studied humanity for many years," the Archon continued. "They are a violent species. They fight among themselves constantly. They destroy their own world even as they reach for others. They are not civilized. They are ferals, clever animals who have accidentally discovered fire for the second time." He turned his compound eyes toward Yuki. She met his gaze without looking away. "The Vorith claim on Sol's system is valid under galactic law," the Archon said. "The humans have no protector species. They have no allies. They have nothing to offer the Council except their biological resources, which the hegemony will harvest efficiently. This is the natural order. The strong consume the weak. It has always been so." The Archon gestured with one of his forearms. "I recommend the Council approve our claim. Give the humans 60 cycles to evacuate their outer colonies. Those who remain will be processed. Earth itself will be harvested for raw materials. This matter should not take more than a standard year." He sat down. The chamber was quiet for a moment. Then other representatives began to speak. Some expressed mild concern. Others agreed with the Archon. Most simply seemed bored, as if the fate of 8 billion people was hardly worth their attention. Yuki listened to all of it. Her face showed nothing. Finally, the Council called for a vote. The result was not surprising. 11 species voted to approve the Vorith claim. Only one, a species of energy beings called the Luminari, voted against. It was not enough. "The motion is approved," the chamber voice announced. "The Vorith hegemony may proceed with their harvest of Sol system. Humanity has 60 cycles to evacuate non-essential populations from outer colonies. No military action against Vorith vessels will be permitted. This session is concluded." The representatives began to leave their seats. Some were already talking among themselves about other matters. Humanity's death sentence was just one item on a long agenda. Yuki remained on the platform. The Vorith Archon paused as he walked toward the exit. He looked down at her with those terrible amber eyes. "You may return to your world, little human," he said. "Tell your people to prepare. The harvest fleet will arrive in 60 cycles. Those who cooperate will die quickly. Those who resist—" His mouth parts clicked together in what might have been a smile. "Those who resist will wish they had cooperated." Yuki looked up at him. She was less than half his height. She had no weapons, no army, no fleet of warships. She had nothing but the clothes she wore and the words she could speak. But when she opened her mouth, her voice did not shake. "You will regret this decision," she said. The Archon made a sound that might have been laughter. "Threats from prey," he said. "How amusing. Goodbye, little human. The next time we meet, you will be screaming." He walked away. His guards followed. The chamber emptied until only Yuki remained, standing alone on the platform with the stars shining through the dome above. Captain Chen found her there an hour later. He had watched the proceedings from a viewing gallery. He had heard everything. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "we should go." Yuki did not move. "They laughed at us, Captain." "Yes, they sentenced 8 billion people to death, and they laughed." "Yes." She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were dry, her expression was calm, but something in her face had changed. Something hard and cold had taken root there. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Use the emergency channel. Tell them the Council has failed us. Tell them to begin the preparations." Chen's eyes widened. "The preparations? Ambassador, those plans were created as a last resort. They were never meant to actually be used. They are being used now." She walked past him toward the door. 60 cycles. That is how long we have before the Vorth arrive. That is how long we have to show the galaxy what happens when you try to harvest humanity. Ambassador, the Vorth have 400 warships. Each one is the size of a small moon. They have destroyed 300 species. We have maybe 50 ships, and most of them are cargo vessels and exploration craft. We can't fight them. Yuki stopped at the doorway. She looked back at him. "Can't is not a word that humans use," she said. "The Vorth think we are animals. Perhaps they are right. Do you know what happens when you corner an animal, Captain? When you threaten its home, its family, its children?" Chen was silent. "It fights," Yuki said. "It fights with everything it has. It bites and claws and tears until either it dies or its enemy dies. That is what animals do. That is what humans do." She walked through the door. Her footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. "Send the message, Captain. Tell Earth to prepare for war." The message reached Earth 6 hours later. It was received by a woman named Director Sarah Okonkwo, who led the organization responsible for humanity's defense. She was sitting in her office when the words appeared on her screen. She read them twice. Then she picked up her phone and made a single call. "It's happening," she said. "Wake up the ghosts." Within an hour, orders were being sent to every human installation in the solar system. Mining ships in the asteroid belt received new instructions. Research stations on distant moons powered up systems that had been sleeping for years. Factories that had been producing civilian goods began producing something very different. On Earth, certain facilities that appeared on no map and existed in no official records opened their doors for the first time in decades. Men and women who had trained for a war they hoped would never come received messages telling them to report for duty. And deep beneath the surface of Mars, in a cavern that had been carved in secret over 40 years of careful work, lights began to flicker on. Rows of ships sat in the darkness, not cargo vessels, not exploration craft, but warships. Hundreds of them, built in secret, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy, waiting for this moment. Director Okonkwo watched the reports come in, ship after ship waking from its long sleep, system after system coming online, the preparations that humanity had made, just in case, just because they were the kind of species that always planned for the worst. She thought about the Vorth Archon and his confident words. She thought about the Council and their laughter. She thought about all the species that had been harvested before, the ones who had begged for mercy, the ones who had tried to run, the ones who had simply given up and accepted their fate. Humanity would not beg. Humanity would not run. Humanity would not give up. She turned to her assistant. "Contact the Asteroid Belt Mining Consortium," she said. "Tell them to begin Phase 2. I want every rock out there turned into a weapon." "Every rock, Director? Every single one." She looked at the map of the solar system on her wall. "The Vorth think they know what they're dealing with. They think we're primitive. They think we'll be easy." She smiled. It was not a kind smile. Let them think that. Let them come with their 400 warships and their confidence and their contempt. And when they arrive, we will show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. She turned back to her work. We make them pay. 60 days. That was how long humanity had to prepare for the end of everything. 60 days to transform a civilization of dreamers and explorers into something else entirely. 60 days to become the thing that the galaxy feared. They were not enough days. They would have to be. On Earth, people looked at the stars and waited. Some prayed, some cried. Some held their families close and whispered words of comfort that they did not quite believe. But some, many, did something else. They volunteered. They worked. They built and planned and prepared with a focus that surprised even themselves. Because that was what humans did when they were pushed into a corner. They did not lie down. They did not accept their fate. They pushed back. And far away across the vast darkness of space, the Vorth Harvest Fleet was already moving. 400 warships, millions of soldiers, a hunger that had consumed 300 species. They were coming for Earth. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The Vorth Harvest Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Sol's system like a swarm of metal locusts. 400 warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They appeared in a flash of twisted light, their arrival sending ripples through the fabric of space itself. Fleet Admiral Krethax stood on the command deck of the Consumption and watched the stars settle back into their proper places. He was old for a Vorth, nearly 3 centuries, and he had seen many things in his long life. He had watched species beg for mercy. He had watched them fight with courage and die with honor. He had watched them simply give up, accepting their fate with a quiet sadness that he almost respected. He wondered which kind the humans would be. "Report," he said. His voice was a series of clicks and hisses that his officers understood perfectly. "All ships have arrived successfully," his second-in-command replied. "The fleet is in standard harvest formation. Long-range sensors are scanning the system now." Krethax moved to the viewing window. Before him stretched the darkness of space, dotted with distant points of light. Somewhere out there, beyond the orbits of the outer planets, was a small blue world called Earth. 8 billion creatures lived on that world. Soon none of them would. "What do our scouts report?" His second-in-command hesitated. It was a small pause, barely noticeable, but Krethax had not survived 3 centuries by ignoring small things. "Speak," he ordered. "The scouts report—" "Nothing, Admiral." "Nothing? No transmissions from any human installation, no ship movements, no energy signatures from their colonies on Mars or the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. The entire system appears to be dark." Krethax turned from the window. His compound eyes studied his officer with careful attention. "Dark," he repeated. "You mean silent?" "Yes, Admiral. Completely silent, as if the humans have abandoned their entire civilization." This was unexpected. In Krethax's experience, species facing harvest reacted in predictable ways. Some tried to negotiate, sending desperate messages offering anything, resources, technology, slaves, in exchange for survival. Some tried to flee, launching pathetic escape ships that the Voreth hunted down with ease. Some tried to fight, mounting brave but futile defenses that provided mild entertainment before being crushed. None of them went silent. "Perhaps they have fled," suggested another officer. "Perhaps they loaded their population onto ships and escaped before our arrival." "To where?" Krethax asked. "They have no colonies beyond this system. They have no allies who would shelter them. And our intelligence suggests they do not have enough transport ships to evacuate even a fraction of their population." He clicked his mouthparts together thoughtfully. "No, they are still here. The question is why they are hiding." He considered the situation. The humans were primitive, yes, but they were not stupid. Their rapid development of technology had surprised many analysts. In just 43 years, they had gone from their first crude, faster-than-light experiments to establishing colonies throughout their system. That kind of progress suggested a species with considerable intelligence and determination. But intelligence and determination did not win wars against the Vorth. Weapons won wars. Ships won wars. and the humans had neither in sufficient quantities to pose any real threat. "Move the fleet to the orbit of Neptune," Krethax ordered. "We will proceed cautiously. Send scout drones ahead to examine the inner system. I want to know where the humans are hiding before we begin the harvest." "Yes, Admiral." The fleet began to move. 400 warships, each one bristling with weapons capable of destroying cities in seconds. They crossed the vast distance between the edge of the system and the orbit of Neptune in a matter of hours, their engines leaving trails of exotic radiation in their wake. When they arrived at Neptune, they stopped. Krithax ordered the scouts forward. 50 small vessels detached from the main fleet and accelerated toward the inner system. They were unmanned drones, equipped with sensors and weapons but requiring no crew. They would examine the human installations on Mars and the outer moons, report back what they found, and then the harvest could begin properly. Krethax watched them go. He felt confident, comfortable. This was a simple operation, the kind he had performed dozens of times before. The humans were young and alone. They had no allies, no experience, no hope. Within a year, Earth would be stripped of everything valuable, and the human species would join the 300 others that the Vareth had consumed. The first scout drones crossed the asteroid belt, and then they vanished. Krethax leaned forward. "What happened?" "Unknown, Admiral. The drones simply disappeared. One moment they were transmitting normally, the next moment they were gone. No explosion, no debris, just gone." "Equipment malfunction?" "All 50 drones at once. That seems unlikely." Krethax felt something stir in his chest. It was an unfamiliar sensation, one he had not experienced in a very long time. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was unease. "Send the second wave," he ordered. "This time, full battle telemetry. I want every piece of data transmitted back to the fleet in real time." Another 50 drones launched from the fleet. They approached the asteroid belt at high speed, their sensors scanning everything around them. The fleet watched through their electronic eyes, seeing exactly what they saw. The asteroid belt looked normal. Millions of rocks of various sizes, tumbling slowly through the darkness. Some were tiny pebbles. Others were hundreds of kilometers across. It was a natural feature of the solar system, created billions of years ago, when a planet failed to form in this region of space. The drones entered the belt, and then the rocks moved. Krethax watched in disbelief as asteroids that had appeared dead and lifeless suddenly came alive. Panels opened on their surfaces, revealing weapons that glowed with barely contained energy. Engines ignited, sending the rocks spinning and accelerating. What had seemed like natural debris was revealed to be something else entirely. The asteroid belt was a trap. Weapons fire filled the space around the drones. Beams of concentrated light. Missiles that seemed to appear from nowhere. Projectiles moving too fast for sensors to track. The drones tried to evade, tried to fight back, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. In less than 30 seconds, all 50 were destroyed. But in those 30 seconds, their sensors had captured enough data to paint a terrifying picture. The asteroid belt was not just a trap, it was a fortress. Thousands of weapons platforms, hidden inside rocks that had been hollowed out and converted to military purposes. Mining ships transformed into warships, autonomous hunter-killers waiting in silent ambush. And behind them, deeper in the system, human warships were moving. Not the 50 primitive vessels that Vorith intelligence had reported. Hundreds of ships, perhaps thousands. All of them armed, all of them heading toward the asteroid belt to reinforce the defenses there. Krethax stared at the data with growing horror. "How is this possible?" he whispered. "They had 43 years. Just 43 years since they discovered faster-than-light travel. How could they build all of this?" His second-in-command had no answer. Krethax thought about what he knew of humans. They were violent. That much was certain. Their history was filled with wars, conflicts, struggles for dominance. They had nearly destroyed themselves several times before finally achieving unity. But that violence had been directed inward, against each other. Now, for the first time, it was directed outward. "The humans knew we were coming," Krethax said slowly. "Not just 60 days ago, when the Council approved our claim. They have known for much longer. Perhaps since the day they achieved FTL travel." How could they know? Because they are predators like us, and predators recognize other predators. Krethex's mouth parts clicked together. They looked at the galaxy and saw what we are. They saw the Vorith, the harvesters, the species that consume others, and they did what any intelligent predator would do. They prepared. He looked at the data again. The numbers were worse than he had initially thought. The humans had not just built weapons. They had built an entire military infrastructure, hidden in plain sight, disguised as mining operations and research stations and civilian facilities. They had been preparing for war for 43 years, and the Vorith had walked right into their trap. "What are your orders, Admiral?" his second-in-command asked. Krethax considered his options. He still had 400 warships. The humans had more vessels than expected, but they were smaller, less powerful, crewed by beings with no experience in real combat. The Vorith had been fighting wars for millennia. They knew how to win. "We advance," he said finally. "The humans have surprised us, but surprises do not win wars. We will push through the asteroid belt, destroy their hidden weapons, and continue to Earth. The harvest will proceed as planned. And if they have more surprises waiting, then we will deal with them as we deal with all obstacles." Krethax turned to face his officers. "The Vorith have destroyed 300 species. We have faced resistance before. We have faced traps and ambushes and desperate enemies fighting for their survival. We have always won. We will win this time as well." He gave the order to advance. The Vorith fleet moved forward in battle formation. The largest warships led the way, their shields at maximum power, their weapons ready to fire. Behind them came the smaller vessels, destroyers, cruisers, support ships, arranged in layers of protection around the consumption. They approached the asteroid belt like a great metal wave, ready to sweep away everything in their path. The humans were waiting for them. As the first Vorith ships entered the belt, the rocks around them exploded into action. Weapons fire came from every direction. Missiles launched from hidden platforms. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, slammed into shields with enough force to shake entire warships. The Vorith fired back. Their weapons were powerful, designed to crack planets and boil oceans. Asteroids shattered under their assault. Weapons platforms were vaporized. The space around them filled with debris and fire. But for every platform they destroyed, 10 more seemed to take its place. The asteroid belt stretched for millions of kilometers, and the humans had fortified all of it. Every rock, every pebble, every piece of debris was potentially a weapon. And then the human ships arrived. They came from deeper in the system, emerging from behind Mars and Jupiter and the moons of Saturn. They were not large ships. Most were smaller than the smallest Vorith destroyer. But there were so many of them. Hundreds, then thousands. They moved in coordinated groups, striking at the Vorith fleet from multiple angles, hitting and running before the larger ships could respond. Krethax watched the battle unfold with growing alarm. His fleet was taking damage, real damage. Ships that had survived 100 harvests were burning, their crews dying. The humans were not supposed to be capable of this. They were primitives, they were prey. "Admiral, we are losing ships at an unacceptable rate," his second-in-command reported. "If we continue this advance, we will lose over half the fleet before we clear the asteroid belt." "Then we fall back," Krethax said. The words were bitter in his mouth. "Pull the fleet back to Neptune. We need to reassess." The retreat was costly. Human ships pursued them, harassing their rear guard, picking off stragglers. By the time the Vorith fleet reached the relative safety of Neptune's orbit, they had lost 63 ships. 63. Against a species that had been spacefaring for less than half a century. Krethax stood on the damaged command deck of the Consumption and tried to understand what had happened. The flagship itself had taken several hits. One entire section was open to space. The crew there dead from exposure. Fires burned in lower decks. The great ship groaned with the strain of holding itself together. "Send a message to Vorith Prime," Krethax ordered. "Inform them that the Harvest of Sol system has encountered unexpected resistance. Request reinforcements." "How many reinforcements, Admiral?" Krethax looked at the tactical display. The human fleet was not pursuing them to Neptune. They were staying in the inner system, regrouping, preparing for the next attack. They knew they had won this battle. They were waiting to see what the Vorth would do next. All of them, Krethak said. Every ship the hegemony can spare. We are going to need them all. His second-in-command stared at him. Admiral, that would be unprecedented. The entire military strength of the hegemony committed to a single harvest. This is not a harvest anymore. Krethak's voice was heavy with a terrible realization. This is a war, and I am beginning to think that we may have started a war we cannot win. He looked at the distant sun of Sol system, the small yellow star that warmed the blue world called Earth. Somewhere down there, 8 billion humans were looking up at the same stars. They were not running. They were not hiding. They were not begging for mercy. They were fighting, and they were winning. The news of the Vorth fleet's retreat spread through the human military network within hours. On Earth, people gathered in public squares to watch the footage captured by drones. Images of Vorth warships burning, of the Great Fleet turning and fleeing back to Neptune. Director Sarah Okonkwo watched from her command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She did not celebrate. The battle was won, but the war had just begun. Casualty report, she said. 47 ships destroyed, her aide replied. Another 92 damaged. 12,000 personnel killed in action. 12,000. The number hit her like a physical blow. 12,000 men and women who had volunteered to defend their home, who had trained and prepared and hoped, who would never see Earth again. And the Vorth? 63 ships destroyed. We estimate 30,000 enemy casualties, possibly more. It was a victory. By any military standard, it was a significant victory. The humans had inflicted more damage than they had received, had forced a superior enemy to retreat, had proven that they could fight. But Sarah knew that it was only the beginning. The Vorth will call for reinforcements, she said. They will not accept this defeat. They will come back with a larger fleet, more ships, more weapons. We're already preparing, Director. The shipyards on Mars and in the Belt are working at full capacity. We'll have 200 new ships ready within 6 months. It won't be enough. Sarah stood up and walked to the large display that showed Sol System. Human ships were marked in blue. Vorth ships clustered around Neptune were marked in red. The Vorth hegemony has thousands of warships. They have been fighting wars for longer than humanity has existed. If they commit their full strength to this system, we cannot defeat them through military force alone. Then what do we do? Sarah was silent for a long moment. She thought about the message she had received from Ambassador Tanaka, who was now aboard one of the command ships in the asteroid belt. The ambassador had written about the Galactic Council, about how they had laughed at humanity, about how they had sentenced 8 billion people to death without a second thought. We make them afraid, Sarah said finally. We show them that fighting humanity is more costly than it is worth. We make the Vorth bleed for every kilometer of space, every asteroid, every moon. We turn this system into a graveyard for their ships. She turned to face her staff. And then, when they are tired and bloody and wondering if this harvest is worth the price, we will offer them a choice. They can continue fighting and lose everything. Or they can leave and never return. What if they choose to continue fighting? Sarah's expression hardened. Then we will destroy them, she said. Every ship, every soldier, every trace of the Vorth that enters our system. We did not start this war, but we will finish it, whatever it takes. She looked back at the display, at the red dots clustered around Neptune. The Vorth Archon said we were animals. Perhaps he was right, but he forgot what animals do when you threaten their young, their homes, their survival. Her voice dropped to something cold and hard and absolutely certain. They bite back. Far away on the command deck of the damaged consumption, Krethax received the reply from Vorth Prime. The High Command was sending reinforcements. 300 additional warships would arrive within 30 days. Another 200 would follow a month after that. The Archon himself was coming, aboard his personal flagship. He wanted to see the humans destroyed personally. Krethax read the message and felt no relief. More ships meant more firepower, yes, but it also meant more targets for the humans to attack. More crews to feed and supply. More complexity in an already difficult operation. He looked at the footage from the battle again. Human ships moving with speed and precision. Human weapons hitting their targets with accuracy that suggested extensive training and preparation. human tactics that showed creativity and adaptability. These were not the actions of primitives. These were the actions of a species that knew how to fight, a species that had been fighting wars against itself for thousands of years, that had evolved on a harsh world where survival was never guaranteed, that had clawed its way to the stars through determination and intelligence, and an absolute refusal to give up. The Vorth had made a mistake. They had looked at humanity and seen prey. They should have seen predators. Krethax turned off the display and sat alone in the darkness of his command deck. For the first time in his 3-century career, he wondered if he was going to lose. The Vorth Archon arrived at Sol System 32 days after the first battle. His flagship, the Eternal Hunger, was the largest warship in the Hegemony's fleet, a vessel nearly 50 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could destroy moons. 300 additional warships followed him, their hulls gleaming with fresh polish and their weapons primed for the destruction of humanity. The Archon stood on the command deck of his flagship and looked at the tactical display. The human fleet had not moved from its position in the asteroid belt. They were waiting, watching, preparing. He felt something that might have been anticipation. The reports from Admiral Krethax had been disturbing. A fleet defeat against a primitive species, losses that should never have occurred. But the Archon did not share his admiral's growing concern. He had faced resistance before. He had faced species that fought with courage and skill. He had destroyed them all. The humans would be no different. "Admiral Krethax," he said, his voice cold and precise. "Report." Krethax stood before him, his posture showing the proper deference, but his eyes showing something else. Doubt, fear, things that the Archon had never seen in one of his commanders before. "The humans have fortified the entire asteroid belt," Krethax reported. "Every significant rock is now a weapons platform. They have thousands of small ships operating in coordinated groups. Their tactics are unusual. They focus on hit-and-run attacks, never engaging in direct combat for long." "Cowardice," the Archon said. "Perhaps, or perhaps intelligence." Krethax hesitated. "My Archon, I must speak plainly. These humans are not what we expected. They have been preparing for this war for decades. Their technology is advancing rapidly, faster than any species I have seen. In the 60 days since the Council approved our claim, they have built hundreds of new ships. Then we will destroy hundreds of new ships." The Archon turned to face his admiral fully. "Do you doubt our victory, Krethax?" "I doubt nothing, my Archon. I simply advise caution." "Caution is for prey." The Archon walked to the viewing window. Before him, the sun of Sol System burned in the distance. A small yellow star, unremarkable in every way. "We have 500 ships. The humans have perhaps 1,000, most of them tiny things that our weapons can destroy in a single shot. This is not a war. It is a harvest that has been slightly delayed." He gave his orders. The Vorth fleet would advance in 3 groups. The first would attack the asteroid belt directly, drawing human forces to that location. The second would swing around the belt entirely, using the massive gravity of Jupiter to shield their approach. The third would remain in reserve, ready to strike wherever the opportunity presented itself. It was a sound plan, the kind of plan that had worked against countless species before. The Vorth began to move. The humans responded immediately. Their ships emerged from the asteroid belt in vast swarms, moving to intercept the first Vorth group. The battle was joined among the rocks and debris, weapons fire lighting up the darkness of space. But this time, the Vorth were prepared. They had studied the human tactics from the first battle. They knew to expect hit-and-run attacks, ambushes from hidden platforms, coordinated strikes from multiple angles. They adjusted their formations, their shield configurations, their weapon targeting. The second battle was longer and bloodier than the first. Both sides took heavy losses. Vorth warships burned and broke apart. Human vessels exploded in bright flashes of light. The asteroid belt became a graveyard of twisted metal and frozen bodies. After 6 hours of continuous fighting, the Vorth first group had pushed through the belt. They had lost 80 ships, but they were through. The path to the inner system was open. The Archon felt satisfaction. The humans had fought well, better than expected, but they were beginning to break. Their losses were mounting. Their ammunition was running low. Their crews were exhausted. Send the second group forward, he ordered. We advance to Mars. Once we control the inner system, Earth will fall. The second group moved to join the first. Together, they swept toward the inner planets, destroying human installations on the moons of Jupiter and the asteroids along the way. Resistance continued, but it was weaker now. The humans were falling back, retreating toward Earth and Mars. The Archon followed with the reserve fleet. Victory was close. He could taste it. And then the humans did something unexpected. As the combined Vorith fleet approached Mars, a single human ship emerged from behind the red planet. It was not a warship. It was a small transport vessel, unarmed and unarmored. It broadcast a signal on all frequencies, requesting communication with the Vorith command. The Archon was intrigued. He ordered his officers to establish a connection. The face that appeared on his screen was familiar. It was the human ambassador, the small, gray-haired woman who had stood before the council and asked for peace. She looked different now. Her eyes were harder. Her expression was cold. Archon, she said, my name is Yuki Tanaka. We spoke at the council, though I doubt you remember. I was given 90 seconds to beg for the lives of my people. You laughed at me. I remember, the Archon said. You told me I would regret my decision. It appears you were wrong. Was I? Tanaka's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. You have lost 200 ships reaching this position. Your fleet is damaged and exhausted, and you have not even reached Earth yet. Temporary setbacks, you will listen. Tanaka's voice cut through his words like a blade. I am not here to negotiate. I am here to give you one final warning. Turn your fleet around. Leave Sol system. Never return. If you do these things, you will be allowed to survive. The Archon made a sound of contempt. You threaten us? Your fleet is broken. Your defenses have failed. We stand at the gates of your world, ready to harvest everything you have. And you threaten us? I do not threaten, Tanaka said. I inform. You see, Archon, you made an error. You assumed that because we asked for peace, we were weak. You assume that because we are young, we are primitive. You assume that because we have not destroyed 300 species, we do not know how to fight. She leaned closer to the camera. You were wrong. Humans have been fighting since we climbed down from the trees. We fight each other. We fight nature. We fight anything that threatens our survival. It is what we do. It is what we are. And now, for the first time in our history, we are united against a common enemy. Pretty words, the Archon said. They will not save you. No, Tanaka agreed. Our ships will save us. Our weapons will save us. And this will save us. She pressed a button on her console. Behind her, through the viewing window of her small ship, something appeared. It emerged from behind Mars, a massive object that had been hidden in the planet's shadow. It was a weapon so large that it dwarfed everything around it, a weapon that the humans had built in secret over decades for exactly this moment. The Archon stared at it in shock. What is that? We call it the hammer, Tanaka said. It is a kinetic accelerator capable of launching projectiles at significant fractions of the speed of light. We built it to crack asteroids for mining. We improved it to crack warships for war. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. Right now it is pointed at your flagship. If I give the order, it will fire. At this range, you cannot dodge. Your shields cannot stop a projectile of this size moving at this speed. Your ship, and you, will be destroyed instantly. The Archon felt something cold crawl through his body. He looked at the weapon on his display. His officers were already running calculations, trying to determine if what the human said was true. The calculations came back. She was telling the truth. You would not, he said. If you fire that weapon, my fleet will destroy your entire species. Will they? Tanaka gestured at the display on her console. Your fleet is wounded. Half your ships are damaged. Your crews are exhausted. And the hammer is not the only weapon we have. We have been preparing for this war for 43 years, Archon. We have weapons you have not seen yet, defenses you have not encountered, strategies you cannot predict. She leaned back in her chair. You came here expecting to harvest prey. You found predators instead. And now you have a choice. You can turn around and leave, today, now, immediately, and we will let you go. Or you can continue this war and discover just how many of your ships we can destroy before you reach Earth. And if we destroy all of you, if we burn Earth to the ground, then you will have won a planet of ash and corpses. Tanaka's voice was steady. But you will have lost hundreds of ships, perhaps thousands. The Vorath hegemony will be weakened. Your enemies, and you have many, will take notice. They will wonder if the hegemony is as strong as it once was. They will begin to plan, to prepare, to think about what might happen if they challenged you. She tilted her head. We might die, Archon, but we will not die alone. We will drag your hegemony down with us. Is that what you want? Is the harvest of one small species worth the death of your empire? The Archon was silent. He thought about what she had said. He thought about the losses his fleet had already taken, losses that were unprecedented in Vorath history. He thought about the weapons the humans had revealed and the weapons they might still be hiding. He thought about the other species of the galaxy, the ones who feared the Vorath, the ones who might stop fearing if they saw the hegemony bloodied and weakened. Admiral Krethax, he said finally, order the fleet to hold position. Krethax looked surprised. My Archon? Hold position. The Archon's voice was hard. I need time to consider our options. On the screen, Tanaka nodded. You have 1 hour, she said. After that, the hammer fires. 1 hour, Archon. Use it wisely. The screen went dark. The Archon used 47 minutes of that hour. He spent the time reviewing the tactical situation. He consulted with his admirals. He ran simulations of what might happen if the battle continued. Simulations that consistently showed massive Vorath losses regardless of the outcome. He thought about pride. He thought about honor. He thought about the 300 species that had died at Vorath hands, none of which had ever fought back like this. And he thought about survival. In the end, the decision was simple. The humans were correct. The harvest of Earth was not worth the destruction of the Vorath fleet. The hegemony had other enemies, other concerns, other wars to fight. Losing hundreds of warships to conquer a single primitive world would be foolish. He gave the order to withdraw. The Vorath fleet turned and began the long journey back to the edge of Sol System. They did not attack the human positions. They did not fire a single shot. They simply left, their great warships moving in silence through the darkness of space. On her small transport, Yuki Tanaka watched them go. Beside her stood Captain Chen, who had been with her since the beginning. His face showed exhaustion and relief, and something else. Something that might have been hope. They're leaving, he said. They're actually leaving. Yes, we won. Tanaka shook her head. We won this battle. We convinced them that the cost of victory was too high. But we did not defeat them. The Vorath still have thousands of ships. They still have their empire, their resources, their hunger. What do we do now? Tanaka was quiet for a moment. She thought about Earth, about the 8 billion people who had watched the stars and waited for news of their fate. She thought about the 12,000 soldiers who had died defending the asteroid belt, the millions more who had worked day and night to build the weapons and ships that had made this victory possible. Now we go to the Council, she said. Now we show the galaxy what humanity can do. Now we make sure that no one ever tries to harvest our world again. She turned away from the window. And then we find the Vorath. We find them in their own space, their own colonies, their own homeworld, and we teach them that humans are not prey. Chen looked at her with surprise. You want to attack them? After they're retreating? I want to end this war, Tanaka said. Not just delay it. The Vorath will come back. Maybe not this year, maybe not this decade, but they will come back, and next time they will be prepared for our weapons and our tactics. We cannot simply defend ourselves forever. So what do we do? Tanaka's eyes were cold, certain, filled with a determination that had carried her from a small farming village in Japan to the command deck of humanity's defense. We make them afraid, she said. We show them that attacking humanity has consequences. We break their fleet, their economy, their ability to wage war. We make the cost of fighting us so high that no species in the galaxy will ever consider it worth paying. She walked toward the bridge of her ship. The Vorath called us animals. They were right about one thing. We are survivors. We adapt. We learn. We grow stronger. And when we are threatened, We do not simply defend ourselves. She turned to face Chen one last time. We attack. The Galactic Council received the news of the Vorith retreat with shock. The images spread across 1,000,000 worlds within hours. Vorith warships limping away from Sol System. The Archon's flagship scarred and damaged, leading the retreat. A species that had destroyed 300 civilizations, driven away by a primitive race that had been spacefaring for less than half a century. Representatives of the elder species gathered in their chambers, in their communication networks, trying to understand what had happened. How had the humans done it? How had they defeated a fleet that should have crushed them in days? Some said it was luck. Some said it was desperation. Some said the Vorith had simply underestimated their enemy and paid the price for arrogance. But others, the wise ones, the careful ones, the ones who had lived long enough to see patterns in history, said something different. They said the galaxy had a new predator. Ambassador Tanaka appeared before the council 1 week after the Vorith retreat. She did not come alone. Behind her stood a dozen officers in the uniform of the Human Defense Force, men and women who had fought in the battle, who bore the scars of combat, who looked at the assembled representatives with eyes that held no fear. The chamber was silent as she walked to the central platform, the same platform where she had been given 90 seconds to beg for her people's lives, the same platform where the council had laughed at her. They were not laughing now. Honored members of the Galactic Council, she said. Her voice echoed through the great chamber. I return to you with news. The Vorith Harvest Fleet has been defeated. They came to our system with 500 warships. They left with less than 300. The Archon himself fled from our world. Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. The Archon fleeing? The words seemed impossible. You gave the Vorith permission to harvest humanity, Tanaka continued. You sentenced 8 billion people to death. You laughed at us when we asked for mercy. She paused. Let the words sink in. We do not ask for mercy anymore. Behind her, the view screen activated. It showed images from the battle, Vorith ships burning, human weapons firing, the great hammer emerging from behind Mars. It showed the moment when the Archon ordered his fleet to retreat, the moment when the Vorith learned that humans would not go quietly. We have shown that we can defend ourselves, Tanaka said. We have shown that the cost of attacking humanity is higher than any species should be willing to pay. And now we have something to say to this council and to every civilization in the galaxy. She stepped forward, her eyes sweeping across the ranks of alien representatives. Do not test us. Do not threaten us. Do not assume that because we are young, we are weak. We have fought for our survival for our entire existence. We have clawed our way out of the darkness and reached for the stars. We will not be pushed back down. Her voice grew cold. The Vorith learned this lesson through pain. We hope that other species will learn it through wisdom. But if they choose not to, if they look at humanity and see prey instead of partners, we will teach them the same way we taught the Vorith. She turned to leave, then stopped. One final thing. The Vorith Archon told me that humans were animals. Perhaps he was right, but he forgot what animals do when you threaten their young, their homes, their survival. She looked back at the council one last time. We bite, and we do not stop biting until our enemies are destroyed. She walked out of the chamber. Her officers followed. The great doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder, and in the silence that followed, the Galactic Council began to understand what the Vorith had learned, that humanity was not prey to be harvested, but a force to be reckoned with, a species born in conflict, forged in struggle, and utterly unwilling to surrender. The stars themselves seemed to tremble. Earth's fury had shaken them, and the galaxy would never be the same. The war did not end when the Vorith fleet retreated from Sol System. It had only just begun. 3 months after the Battle of Mars, the first human strike fleet appeared at the edge of Vorith space. It was a small force, 50 ships, most of them fast attack vessels equipped with the latest human weapons. They emerged from hyperspace near a Vorith mining colony called Kreth Station and simply stopped. They did not attack. They did not fire a single shot. They just waited. The Vorith garrison at Kreth Station sent an urgent message to their command. Enemy ships had appeared. What should they do? Should they attack? Should they call for reinforcements? The command's response was confused. Attack with what? The garrison had only 3 old warships, barely capable of defending against pirates. The human force could destroy them in minutes, so they waited as well. For 3 days, the human ships sat at the edge of the system. They watched, they scanned, they recorded everything. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they left. A week later, they appeared at another Vorth colony, then another, then another. Always the same pattern. Arrive, wait, leave. Never attacking, never retreating, just watching. The Vorth High Command grew increasingly nervous. What were the humans doing? What was their plan? Why did they not attack? Admiral Krethax, who had survived the disaster at Sol System and still commanded what remained of the Harvest Fleet, understood. They are studying us, he told the new Archon, a younger, more cautious leader who had taken command after the previous Archon died of his wounds during the retreat. They are mapping our defenses, our supply routes, our weaknesses. They are learning where we are strong and where we are vulnerable. Then we should attack them, the new Archon said. Destroy their scout fleets before they can report back. With what forces? Krethax asked. Our fleet is still recovering from Sol System. We lost 200 ships in that campaign. The humans lost perhaps 50. They can afford to sacrifice scout fleets. We cannot afford to sacrifice anything. So we do nothing? We let them map our empire? We have no choice. Krethax felt the weight of his words. The humans have changed the nature of this war. They are no longer defending. They are hunting. The new Archon did not like this answer. He ordered the border colonies reinforced. He diverted warships from other fronts to protect Vorth space. He demanded that the shipyards produce more vessels, faster, to replace what had been lost. But the humans had already calculated the cost of these decisions. They had studied Vorth economics, Vorth politics, Vorth psychology. They knew that the hegemony was stretched thin, maintaining control over conquered territories while fighting minor wars on 3 other fronts. They knew that every ship diverted to defend against humanity was a ship that could not be used elsewhere. The human strategy was simple. Make the Vorth choose. Either they could concentrate their forces to fight humanity and lose control of their outer territories, or they could spread their forces thin and be vulnerable everywhere. There was no good choice. Both options led to the same result, the slow weakening of the Vorth hegemony. Director Sarah Okonkwo had designed this strategy herself. She called it the doctrine of exhaustion. We do not need to destroy them, she explained to her staff. We need to exhaust them. We need to make them spend resources defending against attacks that never come. We need to make them live in fear, constantly looking over their shoulders, never knowing when or where we will strike. And when do we actually strike? Asked Admiral James Park, who commanded the human fleet. When they are weak, when their economy is failing, when their allies have abandoned them, when they have nothing left to fight with. Okonkwo looked at the map of Vorth space on her display. We are not trying to win a war of annihilation. We are trying to win a war of attrition. And attrition favors the side that has less to lose. We have less to lose than the Vorth? We have 8 billion people and 1 system. They have 1 trillion people and 1,000 systems. Every ship we destroy costs them more than it costs us. Every colony they have to defend stretches their resources thinner. Every month this war continues. They grow weaker and we grow stronger. She stood up and walked to the window of her command center. Outside, the lights of the city stretched to the horizon. 8 billion people living their lives, raising their children, building their future. The Vorth thought we would be easy, she said. They thought we would roll over and die. Instead, we bit back, and now they are beginning to understand what that means. 6 months after the first scout fleets appeared, humanity launched its first offensive operation. The target was a Vorth agricultural world called Greenfall. It was not a military installation. It had no significant defenses. It was simply a planet covered in farms that produced food for the hegemony's trillion citizens. The human fleet that appeared in Greenfall's sky was larger than any that had been seen before. 300 warships, plus transport vessels and support craft. They surrounded the planet in a ring of metal and fire, their weapons pointed at the surface. And then they broadcast a message. Attention, citizens of Greenfall. This is Admiral James Park of the Human Defense Force. We are not here to destroy you. We are here to offer you a choice. On the surface, the Vorith workers and farmers looked up at the sky in confusion and fear. They had heard stories of the humans, terrible stories about the species that had defeated the Harvest Fleet, that had killed the Archon, that had driven the mighty Vorith from their own solar system. Your government started this war, Park continued. They came to our world to harvest us like animals. They killed thousands of our people. They would have killed billions more if we had not stopped them. But we know that you are not your government. You are farmers, workers, ordinary people trying to survive. The message paused. We are not going to hurt you. We are going to blockade this planet until your government agrees to negotiate. No ships will enter or leave. No supplies will come in. But we will not attack your cities or your farms. We will not harm your children or your families. You are not our enemies. Your leaders are. The blockade began. For 3 weeks, the human fleet surrounded Greenfall. No Vorith ship could get through. The planet's supplies of certain items, medicine, replacement parts for machines, luxuries from other worlds, began to run low. The population grew restless. And then something strange happened. Human ships began landing on the surface. Not warships, medical vessels, supply transports, ships carrying food and medicine and equipment that the blockade had cut off. The humans were giving aid to the people they had blockaded. The Vorith on Greenfall did not know what to think. This made no sense. The humans were their enemies. They should be destroying the colony, not helping it. They should be taking revenge for the attack on their world, not offering medicine to Vorith children. Admiral Park explained it in another broadcast. We are not monsters, he said. We did not start this war. We do not want to continue it. We want peace, real peace, not the false peace that the Vorith offered when they tried to harvest us. But peace requires trust, and trust requires proof. He gestured at the ships landing on the surface. This is our proof. We will not harm those who cannot fight back. We will not punish civilians for the crimes of their government. We will show you that humanity is not what your leaders told you we are. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Other species watched the footage from Greenfall with amazement. The humans, the violent, aggressive humans who had destroyed 200 Vorith warships, were giving medical aid to Vorith civilians. They were protecting the people they had blockaded. This was unprecedented. This was impossible. This was not how wars were fought. But the humans did not care about how wars were supposed to be fought. They cared about winning, and they understood something that the Vorith did not, that wars are not won only on the battlefield. Wars are won in the minds of the people who fight them. The doctrine of exhaustion works slowly but steadily. Over the next year, human fleets appeared throughout Vorith space. They blockaded colony worlds. They raided supply lines. They destroyed military installations and shipyards. But they never attacked civilian populations. They never committed atrocities. They never gave the Vorith government propaganda to use against them. Instead, they did something far more dangerous. They offered hope. On every world they blockaded, human ships brought medicine and food. Human broadcasts explained why the war was being fought and what humanity wanted. Not conquest, not revenge, but security. The chance to live in peace without fear of being harvested. The message spread among the Vorith population. At first, most rejected it. The humans were monsters, their government told them. The humans wanted to destroy the hegemony, to enslave the Vorith, to do all the terrible things that the Vorith had done to other species. But the actions of the human forces told a different story. Every medical ship that landed on a blockaded world, every child whose life was saved by human doctors, every family that received food from human supplies, each one was a crack in the wall of fear that the Vorith government had built. Some Vorith began to wonder, what if their government had lied to them? The economy of the hegemony began to collapse. Trade routes were disrupted by human raiders. Colonies could not receive supplies. The military consumed resources at an unsustainable rate, trying to defend against an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Allied species began to abandon the Vorith. They saw which way the wind was blowing. They did not want to be caught on the losing side of this war. 18 months after the Battle of Seoul, the Vorith hegemony was in crisis. The new Archon called a council of his admirals and advisors. The situation was dire. The economy was failing. The military was exhausted. Public support for the war was dropping. Protests had broken out on several core worlds, demanding peace negotiations. We cannot continue like this, the Archon admitted. The humans have done what no species has ever done before. They have turned our own people against us. Then we should strike at Earth, one admiral suggested. A massive assault, every ship we have. Destroy their homeworld and end this war. With what ships? Krethax asked. He had been made the chief military advisor after his experience at Sol System. We have lost 400 vessels to human attacks over the past year. Our shipyards are working at full capacity, but they cannot replace our losses fast enough. If we send every ship to Earth, we leave our empire defenseless. Then what do you suggest? Krethax was quiet for a long moment. I suggest we negotiate, he said finally. The words fell like stones into water. Vorith did not negotiate with prey. Vorith conquered. Vorith harvested. Vorith won. Negotiate, the Archon repeated. You want us to surrender to these animals? I want us to survive. Krethax met the Archon's eyes. The humans have offered peace terms. They do not demand our destruction. They do not demand conquest. They demand only that we stop the harvest, that we stop treating other species as resources to be consumed. That is our way. That is what the Vorith have always done. Then the Vorith will die. Krethax's voice was hard. Not today, not this year, but eventually. The humans have shown the galaxy that we can be defeated. Other species are watching. They are learning. If we do not change, they will destroy us. Not with a single war, but with 1,000 small rebellions. 1,000 species finally finding the courage to fight back. The council room was silent. The humans are offering us a chance, Krethax continued. A chance to change. A chance to survive. I am not saying we should take it because it is right. I am saying we should take it because it is necessary. The Archon sat in silence for a long time. He thought about the empire his predecessors had built. An empire of conquest and harvest, an empire of fear and domination. He thought about what that empire would look like in 100 years, 1,000 years if it continued on its current path. He thought about the humans, the species that had refused to die, that had fought back with a ferocity that the Vorith had never expected, that had somehow managed to turn the tide of a war that should have been over in months. Contact the humans, he said at last. Tell them we are willing to talk. The negotiations took place on a neutral station in unclaimed space. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka represented humanity. The Archon himself led the Vorith delegation. Observers from a dozen other species watched from the secure galleries. The talks lasted 3 weeks. They were difficult. Both sides had grievances. Both sides had losses to mourn. Both sides had pride to protect. But in the end, they reached an agreement. The Vorith would cease all harvest operations against sentient species. They would convert their harvest ships to other purposes: mining, transport, exploration. They would release all captive populations and pay reparations to the species they had wronged. In return, humanity would end the war. The blockades would be lifted. The raids would stop. The Vorith hegemony would be allowed to survive, though it would never again be what it once was. On the day the treaty was signed, Tanaka stood across from the Archon in the station's main chamber. Around them, diplomats and observers watched in silence. You have defeated us, the Archon said. His voice was bitter. But there was something else in it too. Something that might have been respect. The first species in our history to do so. You should feel proud. Tanaka shook her head. I do not feel proud, she said. I feel tired. I feel sad. I feel the weight of every life lost in this war. Human and Vorith both. There is no pride in war. There is only survival. You could have destroyed us. You could have burned our worlds and harvested our people as we tried to harvest yours. Why did you not? Tanaka thought about the question. She thought about all the meetings where that option had been discussed, all the voices that had called for vengeance, for blood, for the complete annihilation of the Vorith as payback for what they had tried to do. Because we are not you, she said finally. We fight when we must. We kill when we have no choice. But we do not become the thing we are fighting against. The Vorith harvest other species because you see them as resources. We see them as people. Even you, our enemies. We fought to protect ourselves, not to become the next harvesters. The Archon was silent for a long moment. I do not understand you, he said. You have the strength to destroy us, but you choose not to. You win a war, and then help your defeated enemy survive. This is not how the galaxy works. Perhaps it should be. Tanaka offered her hand, a human gesture that the Archon had learned meant peace and agreement. The galaxy is full of species that prey on each other. Perhaps it is time for that to change. Perhaps it is time for something new. The Archon looked at her hand. In his culture, such contact between enemies was unthinkable. But many things that had once been unthinkable had happened in the past 2 years. He reached out and took her hand. You are a strange species, he said. I do not know if that is good or bad, but I know that the galaxy will never be the same because of you. Tanaka smiled. It was a tired smile, worn by years of war and worry, but it was genuine. That is all we ever wanted, she said. A chance to make things different. A chance to be something more than prey. The treaty was signed. The war was over. And across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear for thousands of years began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, things could change. Humanity had shown them that it was possible. Now it was up to everyone else to decide what to do with that knowledge. 5 years had passed since the war. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Vorith hegemony, once the most feared power in the Orion Arm, had transformed into something new. Their harvest ships now carried supplies instead of prisoners. Their soldiers had become builders and farmers and workers. The empire of conquest had become a society trying to find a new purpose. It was not an easy transformation. Many Vorith struggled with the change. They had been predators for so long that they did not know how to be anything else. Some resented the peace treaty and dreamed of returning to the old ways. Others embraced the change with surprising enthusiasm, discovering that there was more to existence than consumption. The humans watched all of this with careful eyes. They had won the war, but they knew that winning was only the beginning. Peace had to be maintained. Trust had to be built. The galaxy had to learn that humanity was not just another predator species waiting for its chance to dominate. Ambassador Yuki Tanaka had returned to Earth after the treaty signing. She had retired from public service, moving to a small house in the mountains of Japan where she could watch the stars at night and remember everything that had happened. She was 70 years old now, and the war had aged her in ways that went beyond simple years. But she could not rest for long. A message arrived from the Galactic Council. It was an invitation, the kind of invitation that had never been extended to a species as young as humanity. The Council wanted to offer humanity a permanent seat among the elder species, a place at the table where the fate of the galaxy was decided. Tanaka read the message 3 times before she believed it was real. She called Director Okonkwo, who had led humanity's defense during the war and now served as the chairman of Earth's planetary government. They want us to join, Tanaka said. A permanent seat on the council, full voting rights, recognition as an elder species. I saw the message, Okonkwo replied. What do you think? I think it is both an honor and a trap. A trap? Tanaka walked to the window of her small house. Outside, the mountains rose against the sky. Their peaks touched with snow, so peaceful, so quiet. It was hard to believe that these same stars had witnessed such terrible war. The Council is afraid of us, she said. They watched us defeat the Vorith, the species that had destroyed 300 civilizations. They watched us turn the tide of a war that should have been impossible to win. They know that if humanity wanted to, we could become the next great threat to galactic stability. So they are inviting us in to keep an eye on us. Partly, but there is more to it than that. Tanaka turned away from the window. They are also genuinely impressed. The way we fought, the way we won, the way we showed mercy when we could have shown cruelty. We did something that no species in their long history has ever done. We proved that strength and compassion can exist together. So what do? We accept. Of course we accept. Tanaka smiled slightly. But we go in with our eyes open. We know what the Council is thinking. We know why they are inviting us. And we use that knowledge to shape the kind of galaxy we want to live in. She paused. I want to be the one to accept. I want to go back to that chamber where they laughed at us, where they sentenced us to death, and I want to show them what humanity has become. Can you arrange that? Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. You've earned it, she said finally. More than anyone. I'll make the arrangements. The journey to Vareth Prime took 3 weeks. Tanaka traveled on a different ship this time. Not the small, battered transport that had carried her to her first council appearance, but a sleek diplomatic vessel that represented humanity's technological progress. The ship was called the Ambassador, and it was crewed by men and women who had been children during the war. Tanaka spent most of the journey in her cabin, preparing her speech. She had written many speeches in her life, but this one was different. This one had to accomplish something that mere words rarely could. It had to change the way an entire galaxy thought about a single species. Captain Chen accompanied her, just as he had on her first voyage. He was older now, his hair gray at the temples, but his eyes were the same, steady and calm and ready for whatever came. Nervous? He asked her on the final day before arrival. Always. Tanaka looked up from her notes. The last time I stood in that chamber, they gave me 90 seconds to beg for the survival of my species. Now they are offering us a seat at their table. Things change. You made them change. We made them change. All of us. Every soldier who fought, every worker who built our ships, every family that refused to give up hope. She set down her notes. I am just the voice. The strength came from 8 billion people who decided they would rather die fighting than live as prey. Chen nodded slowly. What are you going to say to them? Tanaka smiled. It was the same cold, knowing smile she had shown the Vorith Archon all those years ago. The truth, she said. Just the truth. The Grand Rotunda had not changed. The same stone walls carved from 1,000 worlds. The same transparent dome, showing the stars above. The same circular seats, filled with representatives of the elder species. But something was different. When Yuki Tanaka walked into the chamber, there was no laughter, no contempt, no dismissive whispers about primitive ferals who had stumbled onto fire for the second time. The representatives watched her in silence, and in that silence there was respect and fear, and something that might have been wonder. She walked to the central platform and stood alone, just as she had before. But now she carried herself differently. Her back was straight, her eyes were clear. She was not a supplicant begging for mercy. She was a conqueror who had chosen peace. Behind her, a dozen officers in the uniform of the Human Defense Force arranged themselves in a line. They were the best that humanity had produced, admirals and generals, scientists and diplomats, men and women who had fought in the war and helped build the peace that followed. Among them was Admiral James Park, who had commanded the fleet at Greenfall and shown the galaxy what human mercy looked like. The chamber voice spoke. The Council recognizes Ambassador Yuki Tanaka of the human species. No time limit is set for her address. No time limit. The words hung in the air. 5 years ago, she had been given 90 seconds. Now they would listen for as long as she wanted to speak. Tanaka let the silence stretch for a moment. Then she began. Honored members of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today as I did 5 years ago, as a representative of the human species, speaking for 8 billion people who call Earth their home. Much has changed since my last visit to this chamber. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. 5 years ago, you gave the Vorith permission to harvest my world. You laughed at our request for peace. You believed that we were nothing, primitive animals who would be quickly consumed and forgotten. You were wrong. Her voice was calm. There was no anger in it, no accusation. Just simple truth. We did not want war. We asked for peace, for partnership, for a chance to take our place among the civilizations of the galaxy. We were denied, so we fought. Not because we are violent, but because we had no choice. Not because we wanted to kill, but because we refused to die. She activated the display behind her. Images appeared. Images from the war. Human ships engaging Vorith vessels. The asteroid belt trap. The hammer firing at the Archon's fleet. Blockaded worlds. Medical ships landing on Vorith colonies. We showed the galaxy that we could fight, But we also showed something more important. We showed that we could win without becoming monsters. We defeated our enemies, and then we helped them survive. We took no revenge. We committed no atrocities. We proved that strength and mercy can exist in the same hand. The images changed. Now they showed the aftermath of the war. Vorith colonies being rebuilt with human assistance, former enemies working together, children of both species playing in parks that had been rubble 2 years before. The Vorith called us animals. Perhaps they were right. We are animals. We are creatures of instinct and emotion, of fear and rage and love. We are capable of terrible violence when threatened, but we are also capable of something else. We are capable of choosing to be better. She stepped forward, closer to the council representatives. You have offered us a seat among the elder species. We accept. But let us be clear about what humanity brings to this council. Her voice grew stronger. We bring our fury. Yes, we have shown that we can fight with a ferocity that surprised even the Vorith. We have weapons that your analysts still do not fully understand. We have tactics and strategies that no other species has ever developed. When we are threatened, we respond with everything we have. She paused. But we also bring something else. We bring the understanding that strength without purpose is just destruction. We bring the knowledge that victory without mercy is just another form of defeat. We bring the belief that the galaxy does not have to be a place where the strong consume the weak, that there is another way, a better way, a way where different species can exist together without fear. She turned to face the Vorith delegation. They sat in the same seats where their Archon had once demanded humanity's destruction. Now they watched her with expressions that were hard to read, shame perhaps, or grudging respect. We made peace with our enemies, Tanaka said. We could have destroyed the Vorith hegemony. We could have burned their worlds and scattered their people. We had the power. We had the anger. We had every justification that the laws of war provide. She shook her head slowly. We chose not to. We chose to offer mercy instead. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to make that choice. Strength without mercy is tyranny. Mercy without strength is just surrender. Humanity has both. That is what makes us different. The chamber was absolutely silent. Every representative was watching her. Every sensor was recording her words. You tried to harvest us because we seemed weak, Tanaka continued. We proved that we are not weak. You expected us to become the new predators, the new harvesters, the new threat to galactic stability. We proved that we are not that either. She took a breath. We are something new, something the galaxy has not seen before. A species that knows how to fight and chooses when to fight. A species that has the power to destroy and uses it only when there is no other option. A species that wins wars and then helps its defeated enemies rebuild. She spread her arms, encompassing the entire chamber. That is what humanity brings to this council. That is what we offer the galaxy. Not domination, not conquest, not the cold mathematics of predator and prey. We offer partnership, we offer cooperation, we offer the chance to build something better than what came before. Her voice dropped to something quiet and hard. But make no mistake. If any species threatens humanity, if anyone looks at Earth and sees prey instead of partners, we will respond. We have shown what we can do when we are cornered. We have shown that we will not go quietly into the dark. Cross us, and you will face the same fury that broke the Vorith harvest fleet. She paused, letting the words settle. We do not want enemies. We want friends. We want allies. We want to be part of this great civilization that spans the stars. But we will not buy our place with submission. We will not trade our dignity for acceptance. We are humans. We bow to no one. She turned to look at each section of the council in turn. The elder species who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. The younger races who watched from observer galleries. The former enemies who were learning to become neighbors. The Vorith Archon told me that we were animals. He was half right. Animals can be tamed. They can be broken. They can be made to serve. She smiled, the cold, knowing smile that had become famous throughout the galaxy. Humans cannot be tamed. We cannot be broken. We serve only ourselves and those we choose to protect. We are not your subjects. We are not your servants. We are your equals. whether you like it or not. She took a final step forward, standing at the very edge of the platform. 5 years ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for 90 seconds to speak for my people. You laughed at us. You sentenced us to death. You thought we were nothing. Her voice rose, filling the great space with absolute conviction. Now we stand here as victors, as survivors, as the species that beat the unbeatable enemy and showed mercy when mercy was not expected. We have earned our place among you, not through age or tradition, but through blood and sacrifice and the unwavering refusal to surrender. She raised her head high. We are humanity. We came from a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy, and we reach for the stars because that is what we do. We fight, we explore, we build, we dream, and we never ever give up. She turned to leave, then stopped at the edge of the platform. One final thing, she said, looking back at the assembled council. Remember what the Vorith learned. Remember what happens when you threaten humanity's home, humanity's children, humanity's future. Remember the price they paid for underestimating us. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. We forgive, eventually, but we never forget, and we never make the same mistake twice. She walked off the platform, through the great doors and out into the light of alien stars. Behind her, the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, with full voting rights and all the privileges of an elder species. It was the fastest such vote in the Council's history. No debate, no discussion, no objections. No one wanted to be the species that denied humanity anything. Ambassador Tanaka watched the results from the observation deck of her ship. She felt tired, more tired than she had ever felt in her life. The speech had taken everything out of her, all the pain and fear and hope and anger of the past 5 years, compressed into a few minutes of words. Captain Chen stood beside her, as he always did. You did it, he said quietly. A seat on the council, recognition as an elder species, everything we fought for. Not everything. Tanaka looked out at the stars. We fought for survival. We fought for the right to exist. The council seat is just a symbol, a piece of political theater. What matters is what comes next. And what does come next? She thought about the question. She thought about humanity, about the billions of people on Earth who were going about their daily lives, raising families, building futures, dreaming dreams. They did not care about council seats or galactic politics. They cared about being safe, about being free, about being able to look at the stars without fear. We keep building, she said finally. We keep growing. We keep showing the galaxy that there is another way, a way that does not require the strong to prey on the weak. We proved that we could fight. Now we prove that we can lead. She turned away from the window. And if anyone threatens us again, we remind them why they should not. Chen nodded slowly. The Archon was right about one thing, he said. The galaxy will never be the same because of us. Good, Tanaka smiled. A real smile this time, warm and tired and genuine. It needed to change. It needed someone to shake it up, to show that the old ways are not the only ways. Maybe that is why we exist. Maybe that is what humanity is for. She started walking toward her cabin. Get some rest, Captain. We have a long journey home, and when we get there, we have a lot of work to do. What kind of work? She paused at the door. The kind of work that matters. Building, teaching, showing the galaxy that we are more than warriors, that we are more than survivors. She looked back at him one last time. The war made us strong. Now we have to prove that we are wise. The door closed behind her. On Earth, people looked up at the stars and saw them differently than before. They were no longer points of light in an uncaring void. They were destinations, possibilities, places where humanity would one day build homes and raise families and create civilizations that the founders of the first settlements could never have imagined. The war was over. Peace had come. And somewhere out there, across the vast darkness of space, the galaxy was learning to see humanity in a new light. Not as prey, not as predators, not as animals to be harvested or threats to be feared, but as partners, as equals, as a species that had earned its place among the stars through courage and sacrifice, and the simple, stubborn refusal to be anything less than free. Earth's fury had shaken the stars, and the Galactic Council had learned through pain what humanity truly was. A species born in conflict, forged in struggle, tempered by war, and capable, when it chose, of being something more, something better, something worthy of the stars. In the end, that was what mattered most. Not the battles won or lost, not the speeches made or treaties signed, but the simple truth that humanity had proven to itself and to the galaxy, that it was possible to be strong and good, fierce and merciful, proud and humble. That was humanity's gift to the universe, and the universe slowly was learning to accept it. Far away in a small house in the mountains of Japan, an old woman sat by her window and watched the stars come out. She thought about everything she had seen and done: the war, the peace, the long journey from that first 90-second speech to the triumph in the council chamber. All of it leading to this quiet moment, alone with the stars that had witnessed it all. She smiled. Tomorrow there would be more work to do, more challenges to face, more proof to offer that humanity deserved its place among the elder species. But tonight she would rest. She had earned it. They all had.